Today with Robert Stark. He's a podcaster, writer, and artist here in Santa Barbara, California. We are currently at Butterfly Beach in nearby Montecito. How's it going, Robert? Beautiful day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice day, I suppose, but it's not my final destination.
Well, where is your final destination?
I'm headed off to LA. I'm off to meet the one man who's mastered the art of using blogging and online media to achieve the ultimate social status, the ultimate narcissistic supply. This man is a great spiritual guru and moral leader. This man is
Luke Ford. Here he is.
He's the most important man in Beverly Hills. And not only that, he has the spiritual presence. He's a man that the minute you meet him, I certainly think about this. When I meet him, I will be in the presence of a man with just great spiritual wisdom.
Let's begin with the serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
He has the keys to unlock the doors to ultimate social status.
Drive a luxury car. I love it. This is my first luxury car, and it's just so much fun. It's powerful. It's fast.
I'm a great intellectual. I'm a great journalist. I'm a great artist. But people here, they don't see it. They just want to run off and escape to their little bubble. They don't want to face the world. They don't want to face new ideas.
I love where I live. Love being in Pico-Robertson, the heart of one of the two hearts of Orthodox Judaism in Los Angeles. And I'm near all the kosher stores, kosher restaurants, Orthodox synagogues.
It's all in LA. I have so many magnificent paintings. Just think about all the gorgeous women at my gallery openings. I want to apply to Hollywood, go to the top casting agencies, become a major movie star. I'll get invited to all the top Hollywood parties.
In Hollywood, that there's just this palpable, intense, sexual jungle predatory feel, like everyone's trying to screw everyone.
And they will every single beautiful actress, every single beautiful girl that sees herself as too good for Harvey Weinstein's casting couch, she'll come to me. It will be beautiful. I'll be up there in my penthouse looking down on all the people of LA, and they will know the name Robert Stark that will live on forever in infamy.
It's just this cruel, predatory, sexual energy just seems to just flow through and wash over, from acting classes to shooting TV shows.
That is the life that is waiting for me. And then Luke Ford is the one man who has the keys to unlock it all.
Pretty much every day I get up and I look forward to the day. When I go to bed at night, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. That's my definition of happiness to you. If you look forward to tomorrow, if you look forward to tomorrow, you're happy. If you don't look forward to tomorrow, you're not happy.
This is a Montecito magazine, very prestigious. This is my painting right here, featured in the art, wine, and food section. Just think about all the multimillionaires and celebrities who read that. They should be putting down big shekels on my paintings. This is the Wynn Resorts and Casino in Las Vegas. A lot of people go to Las Vegas just to gamble and get drunk, and people associate the city with just like a crass commercialism. But I go there and I walk around the Wynn. I like to take lots of photos for inspiration. It truly is like the retro futuristic fantasy world where all your dreams can come true. So I first visited Las Vegas back in 2010. This is a classic vintage Las Vegas. Just Imagine what it must have been like back in the 70s or 80s, walking around at night, all the like magnificent animated neon. This painting was inspired by the film Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters, directed by the great filmmaker Paul Schrader. One of my favorite films of all times. Superb aesthetics. This was inspired by the scene where Yukio Mishima was in that hotel where he had that sexual experience. Look at this. Isn't this Lynchian? Right into the mind of David Lynch's subconscious, like something right out of Twin Peaks. I heard David Lynch has a big, beautiful mansion up in the Hollywood Hills. Why doesn't he put down some money for one of my paintings? So it look perfect in his house. I'm just thinking about all the great art galleries in LA. Why don't they display my work? Just think about the art district and all the douchey art bros. They don't have any taste. I have the greatest aesthetic visions. There's people with money, but do they have the best taste? I have the best taste. Some people say that those who have the best aesthetic visions are the natural elites. This is my Jean-Paul Gaultier. I put some on in case we have to talk to some aspiring actresses for our film.
I was chuckling at just how Southern California the whole tragedy was. This obsession with brands, image, and this father's connection with the film industry and all that kind of stuff.
And Blonde, he's very, like, the stuff going on about Blonde.
All these Hollywood big shots. We're going to make Journey to Vapor Island by Robert Stark to a #1 Hollywood blockbuster.
You look like a street preacher. Roger Blackstone can save you.
Promoting wholesome, family-friendly entertainment on the streets of Beverly Hills. There are 3 kinds of men in this world. Those who were born to serve, natural-born slaves. They have no free will, blindly follow orders, blindly consume, and conform to the values of the decaying civilization. They are not merely proletariat, rather they make as much of the petit bourgeois. Those who have just enough material comfort, but they are enslaved to the elite, either as of coercion or conformity, foolishly convinced that they will one day be part of this elite. Then there are the exploiters, the parasites, those who control and manipulate the conformist masses. See, the true aristocrat is suppressed, forced to rot in silence. We must rise up and establish true aristocratic order, true justice, true aristocratic radicalism. We shall build a new imperium that replaces the decaying society. aristocratic. This should all be mine. There's nothing more romantic than an external glass elevator.
Robert Stark longs for his long-lost love. This is Robert Stark in his penthouse suite, looking out over his fiefdom. Oh, it feels great to be at the top of Los Angeles, such a wonderful cosmopolitan city, to be a king, an aristocratic radical. Oh, but it can get lonely at the top. For what good is a beautiful world when you have to experience it alone? Down on his luck, Robert Stark decides that his only hope of getting his book made into a film is to pay the price at Sue Collini's casting couch. Robert Stark, down on his luck in the middle of the valley, his wallet stolen, no money for Uber, retraces the steps of Alicia Silverstone, naively believing she's still 19 years old. Will Luke Ford save him from his woes?
Nobody arrives in my stream on the wings of victory, okay? You don't come here to add it to your resume. If you come into this chat room, it's likely a big broken hole in your soul, in your psyche, an inability to connect normally and healthfully with other people and build bonds. And at the same time, you're all on fire to tell everyone else what to do, okay? So that's me. I feel pretty disconnected from most of the people in my life. That's Danito. Yeah, press 1 if you're broken. If you're broken and you also feel entitled to tell everyone else how to lead their lives. Like, those are the people that come into my chat room. They're like me. Absolutely broken. Something broken in the way they connect to other people. It's just not happening in a normal, easy fashion, because they're just wired to attach, but we're not attaching normally and healthfully. So we found some process, such as extreme politics, some form of excitement, such as sports addiction. We've thrown ourselves into religion or to some esoteric philosophy. And this doesn't do the trick. And yet we feel completely entitled to tell other people how they should lead their lives. We've got all these plans how to remake the world, and yet at core, when we're alone and we're silent and we have nothing to distract us, no substance, no process to distract us, we're fundamentally uncomfortable with ourselves. So this is the Western Wall in Jerusalem. It's the wall of the Herodian Temple. So it's these stones, this wall is about 2,200 years old, and this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is where the temple used to be.
But Islam has this practice of building their holy sites on top of other religions' holy sites. So this used to be where the first and second temples were, and some Jews consider it the most holy place in Judaism.
And you've been to Israel a couple times.
Yeah, a couple times.
And you like it a good amount?
Yes.
Yeah. Very
I've
nice.
been here. Like I've been
Oh, yeah?
down here praying and touching the wall.
Yeah. So what do you got there, Luke?
Got the activator. There's nothing wrong with young Robert Stark that this activator couldn't fix.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lifesaver. Just have to put it right there. So, silent la la las are an exhale. So, what you're tempted to do is suck in the air before you make one, so you can make a really big silent la la la. But the whole purpose is to not gasp for air, not suck air in, because when you gasp, and even I will do it, like even 90% of Alexander technique teachers, when they speak, there will be a tiny gasp for air. So it's a very human thing, and so even after 10 years with the Alexander technique, you'll still have that slight habit of sucking in air. But the problem with sucking in air is that you tend to tighten and compress your neck, which, because there are more bones, joints in the neck than anywhere else in your body, it causes compression to ripple throughout your whole body, so you don't want to do that. So with silent la la la, just then allow the air to come in. Don't suck it in, don't pull it in, just allow the air to come in, because as soon as you try to manipulate your breath in any way, you'll tighten your neck. And when you tighten your neck, you tighten your whole body. When you tighten your neck and your body, you compress. When you tighten and compress, your lungs have less room to breathe. You operate less efficiently and more awkwardly. You get all these unnecessary compression patterns. So it's just like as I'm speaking here, I'll just go into lump. Even though I was really weak, now I just let the air in. So it's not it's not, don't exhale, don't manipulate your breath, except to do. No, it's la la la, the tongue's moving. It's like you're doing la la la, but they're silent. So try just doing out loud la la la.
La.
Okay. La 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 la. Now just do it without the sound. And just allow the air to come in. Okay, now speak 1 to 10.
1.
Okay,
2,
hear the difference in the quality of his voice?
4.
Yeah.
Dramatic difference in the quality of his voice.
Yeah.
Normally, his voice sounds strangled because there's so much tension and
You
compression
can tell
going
what's
on.
in my podcast?
Yeah, like normally your voice sounds strangled. So silent la la la's will unstrangle your voice. And so when particularly if I'm doing a solo show, it's really easy to start talking more quickly than I can draw breath in, which strains the vocal cords. So it's just like putting a whole. And it's also a really good thing to do with girls when you first meet them. Just like walk up to them and go.
So Luke, I just did a bunch of silent la la las, and already my vocal cords, my speaking skills are so much more clear. Luke, can you talk about your past struggles before you got into the Alexander technique with your vocal strains and also your problems with posture?
Yeah, I can feel like I can tell just like this how happy someone is just by looking at them, because you don't find happy people with like weird tension patterns. You don't find happy people with all sorts of interfering compression patterns. Generally speaking, happy people are free in their bodies, and unhappy people have all this armoring that they've built up through tensing to deal with their unhappiness. So as I was an unhappy person, I had all these weird tension patterns, which in turn increased my unhappiness. And all this tension would also compress my neck and my vocal cords, strangling my voice. So that was a big deal to me because I wanted to make a career in radio and TV news, and I had a strangled voice, and the two didn't go together. So I turned to my father, who was an accomplished public speaker who could enunciate and project his voice in front of a large audience, and I tried to get
tips from him, and he would say, well, speak from your diaphragm. Your diaphragm's like in here, and there's no way it's actually speaking from your diaphragm, so whatever he was trying to communicate, it wasn't technically correct because the lungs are here, the diaphragm's here. There's no way you can speak from your diaphragm. So what he was trying to tell me, I just couldn't understand it, and it just did me no good. And it's very hard to learn anything from a family member because we have so many like layers built up against learning from families. So I went around through life with a strangled voice, and I found certain tips on how to relieve it. I remember one was like this voice press. I think Dr. Morton Cooper was right, ready, really. Right, ready, really were like the magic words that he'd recommend. Change your voice, change your life. That was Dr. Morton Cooper's book, and I bought that book and I tried to implement some of these techniques, and they work temporarily, but it didn't last long. So I struggled with voice problems all my life until 2008. I heard about the Alexander technique in a pickup book that I was reading by Neil Strauss, like the rules of the game. He had one sentence on the Alexander technique, that women prefer guys with good posture, and the Alexander technique was more helpful for posture than anything else he knew. So I went looking for Alexander technique teachers, and the first two didn't get back to me, and so I just kept looking and looking, and I thought, well, I know this is hands-on, I might as well choose the most attractive Alexander technique teacher out there. And I found someone who was very attractive, started taking lessons with her, and turned out to be Neil Strauss's teacher. And I was taking these lessons, and she was frustrated. She didn't feel like she was making any progress with me. And then about after the 15th lesson, I said to her, oh, this is amazing, this is changing my life. She was kind of stunned to hear it because it didn't seem like it was making much difference. And she said, well, maybe you'd like to train to be an Alexander technique teacher. And I mainly just wanted more of this work. And so it seemed like a slightly more economical way of studying the technique every day. And so I signed up for an Alexander technique training session, which was 3 years of daily study, 5 days a week for 36 weeks a year. And as soon as I got into it, there were all sorts of benefits, such as with my voice. I was also able to let go of all the medication that I was on. I was on clonidine, Klonopam, and lithium. And within my first 2 months of my daily Alexander technique teacher training, I was able to let go of all those medications. I still struggle with my voice for another year or so. I remember I was going to give a public reading of a short story I'd written, and I'd get nervous and I couldn't project my voice. And so my Alexander teachers worked with me. And when I got up to give this reading, I couldn't really project to the back of the room. And then I put my hand in my pocket and relaxed. That kind of relaxed me by being able to put my hand in my pocket, and then suddenly my voice just filled the room. And after that, I didn't really have the same sort of voice problems anymore. Now, I will still get tired, I'll still get, my mouth will get dry, but I have so many tools and techniques now to deal with vocal problems that my voice problems are a thing of the past.
Luke, so the reason I came up here is I just got here from Santa Barbara, and I've been dreaming about what my life could be. I've been having all these great visions, right. And I feel this sense of emptiness that I have this great potential, so I've came on a quest to LA to achieve greatness, and I want to meet with the one spiritual guru who has all the answers.
So you're really asking me about maladaptive daydreaming. So I remember when I was about 6 years of age, my parents were about to host a dinner party, and they wanted me to not be disruptive while they put everything together. And so I sat in a chair, and I remember distinctly I just told myself stories. I just kind of put myself into the stories of Treasure Island and Coral Island and these other boys' adventure books, and made them my own. So I was swept away on this terrific daydream that lasted like an hour or two, and my parents were thrilled because I wasn't disruptive, and I was thrilled that they were thrilled, and I also realized that I had a way that I could leave my situation and just get lost in fantasy. And so I started doing this more and more, and it was daydreaming. It got me out of a miserable situation, and it starts out as an adaptive habit. It worked for me because I'd be unhappy in my present situation. I'd daydream and become happy. And so I had a tool for pretty much whenever I wanted to apply it, I could become happy. The problem is that all these tricks become maladaptive at a certain point, so that when I was in school, I was daydreaming instead of listening to what the teacher had to say. When I was at work, I would daydream instead of doing my job. When I was in a social environment, I would often daydream instead of interacting with people. I would spend my days daydreaming, and as my therapist said to me at one point, I'd hate to see you lose your life in a delusion. My therapist said to me, I'd hate to see you lose your life in a delusion. So a certain amount of daydreaming can be adaptive, but if it starts interfering with your work, interfering with projects that you need to do on your own, interfering with your relationships with other people, interfering with your ability to socialize or to plan or to live in reality, then it's maladaptive.
So I have all these dreams that I want to accomplish,
Right.
and these great visions in my head.
Right.
How do I go about successfully implementing those goals?
Well, you write them down and you set benchmarks for achievement, and when you meet the benchmarks, you reward yourself in a way that's not harmful. So, for example, let's say you want to have 10,000 followers to your podcast, and let's just say right now you've got 250. So you set yourself the benchmark of every month you want to add another 200 followers to your podcast. So if you once you add additional 200 followers to your podcast, then you reward yourself. Okay, now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch this 3-hour movie that I wanted to watch. Something concrete way of rewarding yourself for meeting the benchmarks. But you also need to become clear on why you haven't been making progress towards your goals. Like what are the payoffs that you get to have by not reaching your goals? So you get to feel like a victim, or you get to blame someone else, or you get to be vague. Usually underachievement is a disease of vagueness. So often, because our situation is so miserable, that we like to be really vague and not confront the reality, the painful reality of our lives. And so reality is often a very rude shock to us. And so planning, setting benchmarks, and rewarding yourself for achievement is the opposite of vagueness.
Do you think that there is a sense of naivety in just dreaming that I can come to LA and spend this time around this great spiritual guru, look forward, and transform my life into absolute greatness?
Yeah, because we all want the easy way out, and particularly if you have narcissistic problems, you're very prone to wanting to attach yourself to someone else who has some of what you want, and you think that if you can just attach yourself to a guru, then you'll make your dreams come true. But it's the easy way out. Like the hard way, which is the only way that works, is to put yourself into some sort of program where you have support, where people hold you accountable, where you have action partners, where you have a community, where you have tools, where you have structure, where you have a sponsor, and where you have work to do every day, and you get up and you're focused on the work that you need to do. But people want to be able to say, pay $3,000 to meet with some guru for 2 hours, and they want to take a pill, they want to take a supplement, they want to do everything but the hard, concrete, detailed, nitty-gritty work that actually does make for success. So attaching yourself in whatever form, even like a non-creepy, socially appropriate attachment is not going to transform one. Really, the only thing that will transform one is, generally speaking, joining some sort of community and being held accountable on a daily basis to certain actions that will create the prosperity and the dreams that you want to achieve.
As part of an aspect as being part of a community and these kind of communal standards, is part of it is, do you give up your sort of individual sense of narcissism? On my podcast, I sometimes describe it as aristocratic individualism. Is that an aspect as you join a community, whether it's Orthodox Judaism or even the 12-step program, and you conform to the values and sets of rules of that community organization?
There's a little bit of that. I mean, there's still tremendous room for individuality in Orthodox Judaism or in a 12-step group, but it means that you do start taking other people into account. And the thing is that we all are very prone to fooling ourselves. And when you join a community, it's easy to fool yourself, but it's a lot harder to fool your community. And so your community will tend to hold you accountable in ways that you would not naturally hold yourself accountable. And it's that accountability, it's that daily accountability that makes for transformation.
Have you ever felt a struggle to prove your social status within the Orthodox Jewish community or other communities that you've been involved with, even the Christianity?
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody wants to avoid humiliation and to advance in social status, no matter the community, or just demonstrate itself differently in different communities. So in Seventh-day Adventism, you'll get status by being very upfront with that you are saved, that you have a feeling that you're saved, you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, that you're living out the example that Jesus set for us, that you're following the dictates of the church, that you're proselytizing the church's message, that you're living out the church's teachings in all areas of your life. These will all make for status within a high-intensity, committed Seventh-day Adventist group. Also, economic success and professional success will also make for status in that group. In traditional Orthodox Judaism, knowledge of the Talmud will make for status. So women will always incline towards the high status guy. In traditional Judaism, that will often be the guy who knows the Talmud, in addition to a guy who succeeds in his work and in his income. So status is universal thirst, and pretty much everybody wants to avoid being humiliated, which is low status, and pretty much everybody wants to be respected and admired, and just how that striving manifests itself will be different depending on the context, but it's universal.
I just feel this really intense internal conflict. So on one hand, I have this internal dialogue with myself. I guess some people describe it as your kind of a God self, where I have this internal dialogue that is extremely narcissistic, and I want to kind of mold the world into my image. But then my external personality that I present is much more, I'd say, very introverted. I have a lot of anxiety. I'm taking Klonopin, and that creates a lot of tension. How do you overcome that tension between those two personality characteristics?
Well, when you're as smart as we are, it's pretty clear that our problems are not our problems, because we're pretty smart, and so if this problem was our problem, we'd solve it. But what you're talking about is something that goes deeper than the surface symptoms. So what you're talking about are instincts out of whack. And so on the one hand, you're spending a lot of fantasy time about how you're going to mold the world, but you're spending so much time in fantasy because you don't connect normally with other people, so you're spending a lot of time alone. And because the reality of your life is so painful and frustrating, the more you want to get away from it into fantasy. And so if you were able to think back to times in your life where you had a lot of strong connection with people, you'd notice that during those times you weren't spending as much time in fantasy. So the spending all this time thinking about molding the world into your desire is a defense mechanism for dealing with all the shame that your life isn't working. And so you escape from the shame that your life isn't working by these grandiose fantasies of changing the world. But if your life was working, you wouldn't need to escape from it nearly as much, so you wouldn't be spending nearly as much time in fantasy. Fantasies wouldn't be as cruel, your fantasies wouldn't be as out of touch with reality, and you wouldn't be spending so much time in delusion. On the other hand, because you're connecting with other people in your real life, you wouldn't be feeling nearly as much anxiety, because you would know that you had friends, you had community, you had connection, that you mattered, that you were significant to people, that they liked you, then your anxiety levels would come down. So this enormous dichotomy would start to melt away. Your fantasies would, this is what I noticed, my fantasies initially, once I started going to a 12-step program for sex addiction, my fantasies diminished in intensity, diminished in duration, diminished in cruelty, just going to meetings. But I noticed that my sexual fantasies became less cruel, less intense, and took up less headspace, that I would feel sober just walking out of a meeting. And then I was able to interact with people for a time just in a sober state. Because I was in a sober state, I was able to interact with people in a more healthy way. So I was having more meaningful connections with other people. As I developed more meaningful and durable connections with other people, I had less need to escape from my shame into fantasy. So the less time I was spending escaping from my shame into fantasy, the better equipped I was to interact and connect with other people. So I was forming a virtuous circle instead of a destructive circle, which is real life is real frustrating. I feel intensely ashamed of this, that, and the other thing. Therefore, I need to get away from that shame. Let me escape into delusions of grandiosity.
G'day mate, Luke Ford here with Greg Johnson, the editor of Countercurrents. Hey Torah fans, Luke Ford here with another Torah Talk. Rebbe Luke in the house. We're going to have a tish. We're going to drop some red pills. We're going to take our magnesium supplements. We're going to drink our almond milk without any added sugar.
About a year ago, I got a Logitech HD cam, so it gives me a much better quality. I mean, I spent $180 on it, not that much, so that's about a year ago. Then I bought the standing desk about 6 weeks ago, and then I needed to buy a regular desk underneath it to support it, so then I had to hire someone to assemble it. And so about 6 weeks ago, I decided to upgrade the technical quality of what I'm doing. About a month ago, I bought a Shure mic, cost me $400, and I bought a Behringer sound mixer for $200 to increase my audio quality. I just leave a shirt over it so it doesn't get a lot of dust. And bought some new software, and so I spent about $1,000 to upgrade my technical quality, my streams. I still have a fierce steep learning curve, so that I can master a lot of this new technology that I bought. What I did is I watched J.F. Garepi's stream on how to look and sound like a pro on YouTube, and so I just basically followed all of his advice. And this is my tea. I went to this tea shop and I really liked this Shangri-La tea, and so I bought a lot of that, and it's a good place for me to
Good stand for the camera.
and of course I bought the stand for my mic, and oh, don't forget my $100 for my Topo standing mat. So it's a lot more fun than an ordinary standing mat because it gives you happy feet. You move around. So if you don't have this, what you tend to do is you just kind of lean to one side. That's what most people do. They don't stand up straight, and so this just gives you happy feet. So I just want to move around while I'm doing my streams, and it's much better than just standing in one place, kind of leaning to one side, and it leaves you more refreshed than if you're just standing here and it's soft, feels good on the feet, and I can do various exercises.
So when did you start live streaming in the way that you now do?
I went on JF's show, Woski Live, in January 2018, and it was a thrilling experience. There were 2,500 people in the chat room. The chat room was moving like a river. People were throwing down money. I'd never heard of super chats before.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, whoa, this is exciting. And I did really well on the show. I was very pleased with how I came across and the things I said. And I was so energized that after the show, I did like 2 more mini streams. Like I couldn't come down from the show. So I was just like, oh, let me live stream. It's like, that's a whole new world. And when I live streamed, I'd get 30, 40 people, as opposed to prior to this, I'd get usually 15 or 20 people.
Just watching a video you'd pre-recorded?
No, live stream. I've been live streaming since 2015, but like 15, 20 people, like max was like 60. But going on JF's show, it dramatically increased my subscribers.
I see, yeah.
And so just that evening after the show, when I did my own live streams, it was like, whoa, there are all these 30, 40 people watching live, and then I activated the super chat function on my channel, and now I had a monetary incentive for doing live streams. So basically, after going on Woski Live, I've been live streaming pretty much every day.
Look, would you say that streaming can be unhealthy addiction at times?
Yeah, anything can be an unhealthy addiction. The way to monitor it would be, what are the consequences? Are you giving up opportunities for genuine human face-to-face connection? Is it negatively impacting your income? Is it hurting your health? For example, when I finish streaming, it takes me at least an hour, usually 2 hours, to calm down enough to be able to fall asleep. So I had periods where I was streaming until 10 p.m. I wasn't coming down to be able to get into the possibility of sleep until midnight, and then having to get up at 5 a.m. for work.
Right. So
that would take a toll on my health. So I didn't want to do that too often. So yeah, if it's hurting your health, it's hurting your relationships, if it's hurting your income, if you're getting ostracized because of things you say on the stream, if you're getting fired, if you're being made unhappy by your streaming, then you may well be in an addictive state.
Yeah.
With the whole theme of narcissistic personality disorder and the quest for narcissistic supply, has that been a major motivating factor behind your blogging and YouTube?
Yeah, I'm sure that I think it perhaps shows most evidently in my ego Googling. Like, I'll Google my name probably 3 times a week. And that's somewhere between once a week to daily has been my habit since for probably 15 years. So I inside of me, inside my psyche or inside my heart, there's this desire when I Google my name is that, oh, today I'll find someone out there who truly appreciates me, someone who sees me for who I really am. Like, that's like the motivating desire, and of course usually what you encounter is something quite different from that, but like that thirst for, oh, here's someone who appreciates me, like here's someone who appreciates my work, or I feel like I did a really good blog post here or a really good live stream here. I wonder if anyone picked up on it. I wonder if anyone appreciated it. I wonder if anyone noticed what I was doing. Like this desire to be seen, like that I am seen, that someone sees me. It must go back, it's an overreaction to feeling unseen in my first 6 years of life.
Luke, you've been you've had a YouTube channel for a long time, and you've been a blogger for decades. Can you kind of talk about the evolution of the themes that you blog about? You seem to have like one issue you get very passionate about for a period of time.
Yeah, because if I'm not getting paid, and there's often not being like a direct payday for what I'm writing about or streaming about, then I just do whatever I'm interested in. So Judaism's always been in the top 3 of things that I like to write about. I've been interested in white nationalism since coming across William Pierce in 1998, and so that's been a kind of a recurrent theme of my writings, and that's become known as the alt-right in the past 3 years. So I'm interested in the alt-right, I'm interested in Jews, Judaism, and I've been in 12-step programs since 2011, so that's become a major theme since 2011. And I was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder in year 2000, and so the psychiatrist kind of dictated her diagnosis to my sister, who wrote down notes and then gave them to me, and those notes kind of been emblazoned in my psyche because I saw them as at least 75% accurate, and so I've been interested in psychology. So those are the major themes I think that have dominated my blogging since the writing on the porn industry was different in that even though there was a strong initial attraction to me to the topic, that often died and it became a living and a profession. So between 1997 and 2007, I made my living blogging about the porn industry. So even if I didn't feel like getting up and writing about the porn industry that day, I needed to do it to pay the rent.
You have a saying you say a lot in your stream, that is that nobody comes to your stream on wings of victory.
Yeah.
A broken person attracts other broken people.
Yes. And again, that's not universal. I'm sure there are people in my streams who make six-figure incomes, who are married, who have children, who have a mortgage, who have standing in their community. But I'd say 70% are probably people who come from a great place of pain, just the inability to connect normally with other people. And so that's why they're spending so much time online and frequenting streams and commenting in the chat, because that's like a substitute community and a substitute form of connection. Normal people who connect normally with other people are not spending a lot of time in internet chat rooms.
This is Luke Ford reading from his one-man play, Eroticized Rage.
My favorite erotic scenario stars me at around age 12 getting it on with a hot teacher. I don't know if there's a trend, but I am increasingly not starring in the porn films in my mind. I'm just watching other people. The 2009 Israeli movie Lebanon features a soldier reminiscing about when he was 12. He was at school when his teacher told him his dad had died. She hugged him and drove him home. She had big breasts, so he was hard from the hug, too hard to mix with family and friends who had gathered at his home. So his teacher took him to his room. He could tell she was waiting for him to cry, and that if he did so, she would hold him again. So he told himself over and over, my dad died, till he started crying, and then she hugged him, and her breast renewed his arousal. He could feel his erection poking her soft stomach through his pants. Surely she realized what was going on. When he stopped crying, she just rocked him back and forth, and he found himself rubbing against her stomach. Let it all out, she encouraged, you'll feel better. So they rocked back and forth until he came, in gallons, and he realized he did feel better. I love reading news stories about hot female teachers getting arrested for sex with underage male students. My favorite one is of a hot blonde 25-year-old teacher who was in her classroom after school when two of her 14-year-old students came in and forcibly removed her blouse. To stop them from doing anything more, she gave oral sex to one of the boys, in her classroom. For me, fantasy doesn't get any hotter than this. I had never had sex with any of my teachers, or with anybody, until I was 22. I think that power differential is essential to my strongest masturbatory fantasies. I often feel vulnerable to women. 1,000 have rejected me for every one who has accepted me inside of her. I've always struggled financially and rarely felt powerful in my relationships, except with pathetically loving chicks who I couldn't respect. Watching porn momentarily restores my sense of self, and then afterwards degrades it. And I see women far hotter than those who've rejected me getting it in every hole from parolees. I feel like there's a good and just God running the universe. When a girl rejects me or more painfully cheats on me, I can look at porn and witness the abject humiliation of the haughtiest chicks. Then I can tell myself that I don't hurt so much, things aren't so bad, and I can deaden my feelings of loss. I often felt powerless as a kid. My stepmother had raging premenstrual syndrome half the month and was completely unreasonable. There was nothing I could do but stay out of her way and keep quiet. When I spoke up, she'd often slap me so hard I'd go flying across the room. I grew to hate my stepmother. Half the month she was great, but the other half she was a maniac and nobody could control her. She says that as a teenager, I stopped speaking to her as I formed my own identity. Yet I fear that identity is profoundly affected by my feeling of powerlessness as a kid. And this has fueled my anger at women and my desire to be predatory and powerful, as though that would even the score. Sex with attractive women feels completing. That hot chick, she's the missing piece in my puzzle. If only I could have her, use her, conquer her. I'd feel powerful and I'd have another story for my writing workshop. I don't think someone who felt in control of his life would be as obsessed as I am with having the power in sex. When a woman climbs on top of me, I increasingly have trouble staying hard. By contrast, I once dated a successful pornographer who enjoyed being degraded in bed and only in bed. Outside of sex, Holly ran our relationship, and in the bedroom, she urged me to take out on her all of my hatred of women. Fuck me like a whore, she pleaded. That's the most erotic instruction I know. A few years ago, I relayed this story to my young, pretty psychotherapist who was from a traditional background. She started giggling uncontrollably, and it took a minute for her to regain her composure. That was the only time she ever lost control in our sessions, the only time any of my therapists have lost control, but it was a Pyrrhic victory, because from then on she forbade me from speaking explicitly about sex. Instead, I could only talk about what the sex emotionally meant to me. Where's the fun in that? She's my only therapist I've fallen in love with. She was a frequent source of my gentle, though twisted masturbatory fantasies. I love having girlfriends play therapist for me while dressed in professional clothing and haughtily asking me about my feelings until I can take it no more and I have to fuck them silly. After sex with teacher fantasies, my next favorite genre were inspired by my time around Hollywood. I fantasize about hot, young married secretaries who love their husbands but get manipulated into having sex with the boss to get a raise or a vacation or some essential favor. For the fantasy to work, the woman has to have a strong commitment to her husband and to not want sex with her boss. But she needs something very badly, and the boss offers it to her in exchange for her body. That she feels horrible about what is happening, ashamed and guilt-ridden and dirty, is key for my arousal. I once interviewed a dying man who worked as a photographer in Hollywood. He and several of his photographer pals gave free headshots to actresses who gave them head. Said sometimes a girl would come by to do a trade after already taking care of two of his friends that day. That some 18-year-old would have all that sperm swimming around in his stomach and be game for more blows my mind. I love the 2000 movie Requiem for a Dream. The Jennifer Connelly character needs a fix so badly that at the end of the film she fillets a big black guy. Call me a racist, but in my daydreams it doesn't get more degrading for me than imagining an uppity, young, white thing torn up by ghetto black guys. A few years ago, I had a pretty young girlfriend with pale white skin. She worked as a masseuse in a chiropractor's office. I've often gotten off to imagining her in this Jennifer Connelly scenario, a dainty little mouth gagging on a thick black pole. In the heat of sex with a girlfriend, I think about her much less than 50% of the time. Instead, I think about supermarket checkout girls, porn stars, wives of friends, naughty teachers, and the like. If I can keep my eyes open and focused on my partner, it's virtually impossible for me to stay hard, let alone climax. Okay, that's enough.
You have a background as being one of the most important journalists in the porn industry way back. I mean, you're no longer involved with this, of course. And now you have an interest in dissident politics, including the alt-right. Are there some parallels that both those scenes attract people who lack healthy social bonds to either a religious or ethnic community or just a community in general?
Yeah, like generally speaking, people who are heavily into the alt-right and people who are heavily involved in the porn industry lack bonds, because only people who are already marginalized would naturally incline to joining a marginalized community. So there are certainly exceptions, but generally speaking, the thing that struck me the most about the porn industry was the paucity of ties that these people had to other people outside the industry, that to either a religious group or to their family or to a professional group or to an educational group. These were people by and large who lacked bonds. And that's also struck me about people who get heavily into the alt-right, generally speaking, they're already somewhat socially marginalized, which means socially marginalized equals tend to make bad decisions. People who make good decisions tend not to be socially marginalized. So that's always been the principal problem for dissident and marginalized movements, is that they tend to attract marginalized people. Marginalized people tend to make bad decisions, and so you can't build an effective movement filled with people who tend to make bad decisions.
Is there a key aspect in forming these online political movements and subcultures as a source to achieve this social status and narcissistic supply that's not being fulfilled in day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think the desire to advance in status is probably the strongest human desire after the desire to breathe, to eat, to drink, and to have shelter. After that, I think the desire for status is the single biggest drive. And so a person who has, let's say, no special status right now can develop a Twitter account or a YouTube channel or a blog where he can excel and receive all sorts of plaudits that he wouldn't otherwise receive. And so all sorts of people who could never succeed in the normal world can become somebody in the alt-right, for example. And so they are getting the attention that they so desperately seek. And for at least half the population, we desperately orient towards attention the same way that a plant orients and grows towards the sun. So half the population approximately is basically healthy. They know how to develop friendships, relationships. They have standing in the community. They are not desperately seeking attention, but about half the population is desperately seeking attention, and so they don't know how to do it in healthy ways, so they will do it in these more abstract ways. For example, like the practice of journalism, I found was a way for me to kind of escape my social awkwardness, because it gave me a ticket to go wherever I wanted to go.
So, Lexi Bell, how long have you been in the adult industry?
About a year and a half now.
How on earth did you get the idea of entering porn?
I don't know, actually. Someone emailed me, it's like, oh, you're really cute, you should do this, do that, and then I, met people who went on set, and, I don't know, decided to do it, and it's been fun.
What are your plans for your life?
I plan on doing porn for quite a while and being a billionaire.
You gone driving around California?
Since I've been working here since November, and I haven't really went and done anything, and everyone's like, why do you hate California? There's this, but I haven't really seen anything. All I see is dirty LA all the time and Porn Valley.
Can you talk about the highs and lows of working in porn journalism?
Well, the highs were breaking great stories. People are frequently incredibly honest and revealing when you're interviewing people in the porn industry. So I get a high when people are honest. Like, I feel the molecules of the air change when people are honest, and it's invigorating and intoxicating. I love honesty, and a lot of people in the porn industry were at times and in places very honest, and so I loved getting a good story, loved getting a good interview. So those were the highs. The lows were that it was socially ostracizing. If you have any ongoing connection to the porn industry, people will just naturally tend to regard you as the porn guy, and will naturally tend to either shun you or to belittle you.
And you even wrote a book about this, but your involvement in the porn industry as a journalist led to conflict with the Orthodox Jewish community.
Yeah, but it also leads to conflict with any decent person. Like, any decent person is going to be somewhat askance at somebody who has an ongoing relationship with the porn industry. So yeah, it cost me my position in 5 different synagogues, all of which I can now go back to. That's all in the past. But yeah, it was isolating. It did cause expulsions from various Orthodox synagogues, and lost a lot of friends and damaged my reputation in my Orthodox Jewish community. It was very damaging. It was very isolating. It was a way that I was living out my addiction to rejection. Growing up in foster care, I experienced a lot of rejection, like moving from family to family to family, and I was recreating it, and porn was simply only the tool that I was using to recreate this feeling of intense rejection. But if I wasn't in the porn industry, I probably would have been drawn to other behavior that would recreate that intense feeling of rejection, which was probably the most intense emotion that I felt growing up.
You have a one-man play a while back titled Eroticized Rage. Eroticized rage is rage that becomes eroticized. Eroticized rage, and from your experience, does it stem from struggles with social status, social rejection, romantic rejection? And what are, I mean, you struggled with it, but what are the absolute worst case outcomes?
Eroticized rage comes from the repercussions of dealing with an over-controlling opposite-sex parental figure. That's where eroticized rage comes from. Then you will find other fuel for it, just from rejection and frustration and the myriad ways that your life doesn't work. You know, you can get high when you tap into that feeling of eroticized rage. It's a power, it's a lava, it's volcanic, and so you start becoming used to tapping into that rage as an energy, as a life force, as a way to give your life meaning. And then as you tap into it, you want to escalate it. You always want the sex to be more intense, more intense, more intense, and that comes at the expense of intimacy. So intensity tends to be the opposite of intimacy, and so I was pursuing intense sexual relationships that came at the expense of intimate relationships, which then left me isolated and alone and unhappy, and even more needing to seek out that power of eroticized rage.
There is this big phenomenon with mass shootings, and I guess the most famous example would be Elliot Rodgers and his famous manifesto. What role does eroticized rage play in those incidences?
Well, I think eroticized rage is, again, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of inability to connect. And so eroticized rage isn't the primary problem. It's a symptom of inability to connect normally with other people. Eroticized rage is simply the manifestation of the particular way that this problem manifests itself. So if you don't connect normally with other people, you're going to have to connect to something, because we're wired to connect. So if you don't connect with other people, you'll connect to alcohol, or to drugs, or to gambling, or to pornography, or to eroticized rage, or to maladaptive daydreaming, or extreme exercise, or extreme practice of religion, or extreme diet. We're just wired to connect. And so if you don't connect normally to other people, you'll connect to something else. And let's say you deal with your addiction to gambling. If you haven't learned to connect normally with other people, you'll just transfer your addiction to hookers, or to blow, or to extreme eating. We're just wired to connect, and so we have to learn to connect with other people, connect with ourselves, and to connect with God.
So you mentioned in that answer about kind of creating the feeling of rejection as almost an addictive quality, and also moving towards extreme things as a sort of can be a transfer of addiction. So I guess, do you think your involvement in the alt-right is at all a transfer of addiction, say from something like pornography,
right,
to extreme politics?
Yeah.
And I mean, in some ways it seems like clearly there are aspects of that, but I guess what I'm really curious about is does that for you, does that ever make you doubt the whole thing? Does it nullify the whole thing if it's just a sort of maladaptive daydream, or is there still something about it that is genuinely like a search for social good, unlike the pornography industry? Is there that transcendent, maybe transcendence is too strong of a word, is there that quality of the alt-right that makes it greater than the sum of its extremity?
Yeah, part of my investigation of the sex industry is I wanted to see if there was like a transcendent social good from freer sexual expression. And so too, my investigation of the alt-right and dissident right politics has been an exploration of where could this be healthy, where could this be good, where is this powerful and true. And even if my own motives are mixed, and everybody's motives are mixed, if I'm using a craft, I don't have to worry about it. So if I'm using a craft of good writing or a good interviewing technique, it doesn't really matter why I'm interviewing someone. I know I'll get something of quality because I practice a technique that allows people to open up, to express themselves, and that's a good thing if we get more understanding of people and movements. So as long as I'm practicing a craft, then I can feel secure no matter what I'm investigating. So even if I'm looking for the same sort of excitement that I got from investigating the porn industry, now investigating extreme politics, as long as I stay true to my craft, I don't have to worry about it. I can just, this is just what I'm interested in right now, and 5 years from now I'll be interested in something different. As long as I'm practicing good interviewing technique, as long as I'm treating people in an upright way, then I don't have to worry about my excitement seeking motivations, do they discredit what I'm doing? No, I don't worry about it.
You can sort of sublimate into a craft or into art, kind of like you do with your painting, Robert. Or what you do with your streaming? Or is that a mischaracterization of what you're saying?
I wouldn't say sublimate. I would just say the craft determines how the motivations are expressed.
I see.
So the craft shapes my curiosity, whether it's about sex or it's about extreme politics or racial identity or religious identity or nationalism. As long as this motivation is expressed through my craft, then I know I'm on solid ground.
So you'd say that there's a transcendently good quality about things that are well crafted.
Yeah. If you do good work, it doesn't really matter what your motives are. So, for example, if you devote yourself to helping people who are dying of AIDS, it doesn't matter that you're doing this to show your dead mother that you're really a righteous person, even though your motive is irrational. As long as it's leading to good work, to something that's objectively good in the world, then you don't need to worry that you have an irrational motivation.
And that is potentially, maybe you're still exploring, but that's potentially a big difference between the porn industry and the alt-right, is that perhaps, unlike with the porn industry, there is a real social good that can come out of dissident politics.
No, they're the same. I thought I was exploring whether there was a genuine social good that can come out of freedom of sexual expression. It's a legitimate question, and I explored it. And if there isn't a good, then how much damage is there? And so that was a worthy topic. I'm proud of a lot of my reporting on the porn industry and the interviews I did, as long as I stuck to my craft. And I departed from my craft and became just narcissistic, attention-seeking, shock jock, unfair to people, not upright, dishonest, then I got into trouble. Then I embarrassed myself. Then I did things that I regretted. But as long as I stuck by the craft of good reporting and good interviewing technique, then whether it was on the porn industry or the alt-right, then I can feel calm and peace and even feel some pride in the quality of the work that I've done.
Why is everyone obsessed with the alt-right? Because it's fascinating. It's the most exciting, fascinating thing to happen in American politics. I don't know, maybe since Teddy Roosevelt.
Hi there, I'm Luke Ford. I'm with Richard Spencer of altright.com. Richard, what the heck is going on with the alt-right these days?
You are a special YouTuber in that you are Jewish, and yet you keep attracting a very highly alt-right audience.
Who have you met from the alt-right in real life?
I met Tom Sunik. I met William Johnson. I've talked to most everyone.
Yeah.
Via the internet, via phone, via Skype, or on my show. But in person, I've only met a handful of people.
And I think I've pretty seen on Facebook. You think Richard Spencer and Greg Johnson are pretty much the most, and F. Roger Devlin are the most intelligent people.
Yeah, I think they are the most articulate expositors of alt-right philosophy.
Yeah.
Now there are other people who are equally as intelligent who aren't as philosophical.
Yeah. Do you think there's a chance that one day, say 5-10 years from now, you'll look back on your involvement in the alt-right in a way that's at all similar to the way that you kind of now look back on your involvement in the porn industry? Is there a chance to kind of say, well, at that time I was looking for something exciting online, I needed to feel as if I was part of something important? And I only say that because in certain videos you allude to that being an aspect of the appeal.
I don't think I'll look back with regret, because I don't even look back with regret on the porn industry. I think I've strongly internalized something that I heard about 20 years ago, that given who I was, I could not have acted any differently at a certain point in time. So I think I've really strongly internalized that. So even though I'm embarrassed that I once directed a porn movie, given who I was, I couldn't have acted differently at that time with that opportunity. And so I'll probably look back at some of my more zealous streams and blog posts about the alt-right and realize, hey, I was intoxicated by this movement that was incredibly exciting, and I thought was a strong response to needs in the West. And I was excited, and I was naive. Probably I'll have that reaction, but I don't think I'll ever be filled with regret. If other groups are going to play identity politics, then it's inevitable that white people will play identity politics too. If it's perfectly good and acceptable, and even a fantastic thing that blacks play identity politics, and that Jews play identity politics, and that Latinos play identity politics, and why the hell would it be wrong for whites to play identity politics? So the alt-right is simply white people operating according to the rules of the game. Every other group's playing identity politics. There's no way that white people aren't going to start playing the same identity politics game, as they are the majority that will likely be more effective if they ever get around to standing up for their own group interests.
What would be your advice for younger people who may have taken the quote-unquote red pill? What are some ways where you can balance this extremely socially unpopular perspective with also trying to lead a productive life with good quality relationships, working towards healthy goals?
By leading a productive life with strong relationships, moving towards goals. Because if the red pill discombobulates you so that you start making all sorts of antisocial decisions that send your life into a downward spiral, it's not actually the red pill that's doing that. It just seems like it's the red pill that's activating you. But really what's happening is that an excuse is being made for you to act on your antisocial impulses. And so the alt-right gives an opening to people to say the nasty things, to behave in the self-destructive ways that a large part of them have really wanted to do, and now you feel a sanction to do this. So it's not like doctors and lawyers, by and large, are swallowing the red pill and then destroying their practices. By and large, it's people who are struggling working $11 an hour jobs, or then taking the red pill and then losing that $11 an hour job and struggling to find even work for $8 an hour. That's what I generally see in people who take self-destructive spirals upon swallowing the red pill. So again, the problem is never the problem. The problem is always something deeper. So people who lack human connection and then discover the red pill, they will act in antisocial ways because they're not already bonded in a normal way to other people. So it'll have much more of an explosive and destructive effect. People who have normal bonds with family and friends and who are moving ahead in their profession and getting an education, they are much less likely to be discombobulated by the red pill in the first place. Being discombobulated by the red pill is primarily a reflection that you lack normal ties and bonds to other people. If you have people who love you, I've had this experience where I had friends, where I had community,
and all of my antisocial tendencies just were considerably muted. And I wasn't even holding them down. I wasn't tamping them down. I wasn't locking them away in a deep and dark place in my brain. They didn't even come up because I just so enjoyed being around everyone, so enjoyed my friends and my relationships that it wasn't even a question for me that I was going to blow everything up by saying something socially inappropriate. But if you find yourself having to like tamp down and fight down and swallow all sorts of things that you want to say, it's because you don't have normal productive friendships and relationships to begin with.
Do you think there's something especially isolating about the culture in LA that has that affected the trajectory of your life, maybe getting into the porn industry, but also Orthodox Judaism and perhaps even the alt-right?
Yeah, I guess at first my initial response is no. Like Los Angeles, I've met people, I've bonded with people, I've experienced human connection, and to think that people are different in LA is just a delusion. And I came here with the idea that there are a lot of loose women here, but the women here are pretty much like the women I've been around everywhere else. Then I had a friend, an older friend, who pointed out there's no way I would have ever converted to Judaism if I'd been in Australia. That that just would not have been a possibility. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess that's right. So I guess geography and place does matter. So I guess being in a large anonymous city gives you more possibilities. So that's true. But I've always been deeply involved with the Jewish community since my first day in Los Angeles. First day, I believe, was March 30, 1994, and I went to a Chabad house to arrange for a Passover Seder because Passover was beginning the next evening. And so from day one in Los Angeles, I've always been
just immediately drawn.
Yeah, I've always been deeply involved in the Jewish community. I got converted to Judaism before I moved here, but I've always had connections. I've always had experience of community, and so I've never experienced that atomization with the intensity that someone who doesn't have a community. So I've certainly struggled with my human connections, but there's always been something there. There's always been a place to go where I could be with people, and we were connected by a similar peoplehood, by a similar tribe, by a similar religion and religious practices and religious studies. So I've always had that as a bulwark against that feeling of atomization. But I also have always enjoyed getting out of the Jewish community and going into the wider world and feeling anonymous and feeling like I could explore more things. I sometimes joke that I converted to Judaism so that I could chase shiksas. But there is something different once you convert to a tribe, then the other is far more other. Like shiksas obviously weren't shiksas when I was a shagutz, when I was not Jewish. But I certainly slept with a lot of non-Jewish women even while I was intensely connected to Judaism, which is a contradiction, but it is the way my life has gone. So I have enjoyed the relative anonymity of being in a big city. Whenever I've developed an enthusiasm, I've always been curious in what debunks my enthusiasm. So when I got into Judaism, I became curious about those books that were most damaging to Judaism, or what are the most cogent arguments for denying the foundational principles of Judaism. And when I was a Christian, I became interested in what debunks Christianity, and when I was a capitalist, I became interested in communism. So this is the way I've always lived my life. I realize to everyone else it seems schizophrenic and wildly contradictory and impossible to put together. More importantly than impossible to put together, we all want to economize, and so we just don't have enough room in our heads to bother with like who needs to try to figure that out.
we don't have time to try to understand contradictory data like that, so we just want to, generally speaking, ignore it because we just don't have enough space in our heads. But what to everyone else has seemed contradictory and schizophrenic to me is just the way I investigate everything.
So this is Pico-Robertson, Los Angeles, California. Luke, you were saying you've lived here as long as you've lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah. 1994. So Luke, are you kind of like a major celebrity in this area?
I was a minor celebrity after appearing on 60 Minutes, I guess. And Entertainment Tonight, like briefly, if I get on the cover of a magazine or a newspaper.
Luke, what was it like being on the cover of the Jewish Journal?
I always thought it was inevitable. It almost happened in 2001. So I always figured out that day would come. It's a much more intimate experience of being on the cover of a secular publication because the Jewish Journal is what's in Jewish homes on the Sabbath over the weekend.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a flattering article, so
oh really?
It wasn't one that served my interests.
Is it the one that asked the question, is Luke Ford good for the Jews?
I think so.
Yeah. And so you've never really even considered moving away from Los Angeles?
Everything I want is here.
Yeah.
Eroticized Raid, the documentary.
Eroticized Raid. I can always put it on with.
It's for actors especially, and it helps you release unnecessary muscle tension in your vocal cords. So the key part of Alexander is the silent la la la. So you don't inhale. You just keep your breathing pattern straight, and you go. Repeat after me.
It loosens the vocal cords.
Oh, I've done that. I don't want to do that only because my...
The silent la 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 goes.
La la la. Excellent. Very good, very good. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
It's a lot of tongue action.
Yeah.
Here. I like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Have you heard of the silent la la la?
Every day.
The silent la la la.
His attempts to spread Luke Ford's message of love and equality in West Hollywood having proven ineffective, Robert Stark decides upon an alternative strategy.
I thought he only came out his nose.
Oh man, what are you...
Luke Ford is a great moral leader. He has shown me the way to a better life. So Luke Ford voted for Donald Trump. Luke Ford supports the wall, and Luke Ford is a moral leader of the city of LA, the city of Beverly Hills. Seriously.
He looks like a piece of shit.
Ford is a great man. Luke Ford is a moral leader. Listen to the words of Luke Ford. watch his live stream on YouTube. Google Luke Ford. LukeFord.net. Luke Ford, moral leader. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Luke Ford is a moral leader. Luke Ford is a moral leader. Stay in your lane. Luke Ford. Luke Ford is a moral leader. Check out his live streams on YouTube. He will give you all the answers to life. Luke Ford. LukeFord.net. Is that right? Are you looking for the answers? I once was, but Luke Ford showed me the ways. He showed me the ways at a better life. He showed me moral guidance. He taught me to stay in my lane. He taught me to stop maladaptive daydreaming and take a cold shower and face the truth. Luke Ford has the answers. Listen to the man. This guy right here, Donald Trump, make LA great. I'm living life to the fullest thanks to my spiritual guru, Luke Ford. Check out his live streams, LukeFord.net. Check out Luke Ford. Learn to live better. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane.